Rob said, let's have an introduction.
1 minute.
January.
Good evening.
I don't know.
Public meeting of the Hillsborough Township Board of Education will now come to...
Girl.
Hillsborough.
Did I say Hillsborough? Excuse the slip. The public meeting of the Monroe Township
There we go. That's a little
Board of
better.
Education will now come to order.
Try to cut that out.
Mr. Gorski, roll call, please.
Ms. Arminio.
Here.
Mr. Braverman. Here. Ms. DeMayo.
Here.
Mr. Kaufman.
Here.
Mrs. Koloponowicz.
Here.
Mr. Nostine.
Here.
Mr. Poi.
Here.
Mr. Prezioso.
Here.
Mr. Ryback.
Here.
Mr. Zarneski.
Here.
Mr. Board President, we have a quorum present this evening. In accordance with the provisions of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law, the Monroe Township Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted December 11th, 2015 at all schools, the Home News Tribune, the Cranberry Press, and filed with the clerk of the municipality.
Okay, at this time, I would ask that you please rise and join me in the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Normally, that particular privilege is given to one of our student board members, but I see they're both absent tonight, possibly because they're involved in the winter concert, which is taking place in the auditorium at this time. Okay, we'll move on to the approval of minutes. I move that we accept the minutes of the Public Board of Education meeting held on October 14th.
So moved. Second.
All right, any corrections or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are accepted. I move that we approve the minutes of the closed session meeting of October 14th.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, those minutes are accepted. I move that we accept the minutes of the special Board of Education meeting of October the 26th.
So moved.
Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Oh, I abstain. I was not at that meeting. Is that correct, Mr. Gorski?
Abstention noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, did we do that one already? Okay, Michelle threw me off there with her. Okay, I move that we approve the minutes of the closed session meeting of October 26th.
So moved. Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Abstention. Ms. Arminio. Okay, we do not have any student board members here tonight, so we will dispense with that report. And at this time, we will have a presentation of the 2014-15 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, often referred to as the CAFRA. Mr. Gorski, are you going to introduce our auditor?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Poi, members of the Monroe Township Board of Education, members of the public, as per statute, each public school district is required to have an independent audit performed annually by a CPA with a public school accountant license issued by the state. The board has engaged Gerald Stankiewicz, partner with Samuel Klein and Company, to perform that audit this year. Mr. Stankiewicz?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Mike. The CAFRA is there's two documents in front of you, actually. The CAFRA is the thicker of the two. And the CAFRA is actually a financial document that we put together in conjunction with the business office. Information in this document belongs to the Board of Education. The only thing inside this document that belongs to us is the independent auditor's opinion, which I will get to the chase, expresses an unmodified opinion, otherwise known in the old days as a clean opinion or an unqualified opinion. I'll get to how we get to that point shortly. The other document is my letter to the board as to the operation of the business office. If you'll note, the smaller of the two has my firm's letterhead on it. The other one doesn't, because the thicker of the two, like I said, is actually the board's document. The audit is conducted, as Michael said, in conjunction with the statute. We are hired by the board to audit the records of the Business Administration Office of the district. We are independent auditors. We have to be independent of the records. We're not allowed to touch the records of original source documents, documents of origination. We're not allowed to. We don't do that. If we do, then we are violating our independence, and we're unable to express an opinion on the documents. We get presented with a set of records for audit, and for the record, prior to this, for the rest of the board members, there was a meeting of the Business, I believe, and Operations Committee. I believe we met when were we here? Last Wednesday? And we discussed the contents of the audit pretty much in detail. And prior to that, a week before that, we had what's required to be called the formal exit conference with the management of the district. That occurs before the audit's actually issued. It's a chance for management to review the report before it's issued to the board, and for them to, for a chance for them to refute any comments or any information in the audit. They're allowed to refute it, but in the end, it's my call as to whether something gets included or excluded. And for the record, there were no findings, so there wasn't really much to discuss in terms of any refuting of our points. So basically, our audit starts, a good audit, I would say, starts on the first day of the fiscal year under audit. We come in actually, we're here in the summertime looking at information relative to the prior year, but at the same time, we're looking at documentation relative to the current year as well. We're looking at paid bills in the current year to determine if they have any applicability to the prior year, and also that they're also correct and moving forward. We also audit in November and October. We come in and we start with the ASSA audit. We audit the DRTRS, we audit the IEPs, we audit the free and reduced loan applications for the next fiscal year. Getting back to the actual audit, though, our staff comes in generally in July, reviews the minutes. We start reviewing preliminary information. We start pulling the audit samples. And again, the audit, the root word is sample. It's an audition, so to speak, believe it or not. So we come in, we select our information for our samples, and we sample expenditures. We sample payroll transactions, which is the two primary areas of the audit. We make our selections. We give our requests to the staff. They pull the information. We also audit the food service fund. We look through their records and make sure that even though they are a subcontractor, the board still has the legal right to look at their records, and we do that. We look at their expenditures, we look at their payroll, we look at their procedures and how they formulate the monthly meal counts for which we send the claims into the government. We also look at their handling of cash receipts on behalf of the board. We found no problems in that area. They are also required to submit an internal control report to the board that their internal controls, because they might represent 50, 75 districts, everything's being channeled through one business office on their end, so we make sure that report is lined up, and that report is on file and actually is required to be on file when you contract with them. So we go through that. We also look at expenditures of the board itself. We kind of, as I expressed to the Business Operations Committee, I kind of like to do a little bit more than the minimum, let's say, required audit work, because that's just how my training was. You know, you do a little bit more. Don't rely totally on the minimum standard of the profession. We look at a little bit more. And that's important for me. I came from a very small firm and merged into a larger firm, and I still use the same things that I was taught by my mentor. So I try to make sure that I get a little more comfort level when I sign my name to the report. And we work comfortable. I had one of my staff doing the expenditure testing. We run a sample. We run a statistical sample based on the check numbers, the check ranges. So we sample transactions, an individual check. We also look at every bill above a certain dollar level. We look at your transportation bills. We look at your tuition bills. We go through your maintenance accounts. We look at what we call significant items. We look at health benefits bills. So we look at capital outlay. Just want to make sure, all with the intent of making sure that it's all properly documented. B, it's charged to the right account. C, that it's in compliance with the public school contracts law. And at the tail end of the year, we want to make sure that the bills were cut off properly with respect to the end of the fiscal year. There are bills, if you work in business, that are incurred prior to the fiscal year end. However, they don't get paid till July or August or September. We make sure those bills are thrown back. In all those areas, we found no exceptions. Okay, and like I said, I use a little bit more aggressive tactic when I go through the bills at any place I do. Again, that goes back to my training. We had good results from that. We also spend a significant amount of time in the biggest area of any school or any business is in the payroll. Your payroll office provides us with the sufficient data that we need to form an opinion as to its operation. Again, we do a random sample of payroll checks from A to Z, and we'll sample and make sure that in each case that the person who's there has all the proper paperwork on file, that they're properly paid in accordance with board authorization, that their withholdings are proper, and most especially in the area of the required health benefits withholding. Make sure all that their documents are on file and current, I-9s, W-4s, all that stuff that if you work somewhere, you'd be required to file and have on deposit as well. So we go through all that. We also expanded a little bit. We will take a couple payrolls and look at every part-time and overtime disbursement that goes through there. I don't know in a district this size that running a standard audit sample gives me and the board a sufficient comfort level that things are operating properly. So we will look at, and it's rather cumbersome, but it's not difficult to audit, it just takes time. And we look at part-time and overtime over and above what we normally sample. And for the people who we do sample, we make sure that they got paid exactly what they were entitled to. Base pay, coaching, stipends, extra pay, lunchroom coverage, all those different items. So payroll is operating properly as well. In terms of revenue, that's relatively easy to audit here. Obviously, you have tax levy and state aid. Those are kind of easy. And you also have tuition coming in from a neighboring community, which we look at the documentation on that. So the three major areas, revenue, payroll, and expenditures, we got good and successful results from those. We got good results from our audit of the food service fund. The most important thing and you've heard this expression before, that cash is king, okay? The general ledgers, as presented, okay? We're all in agreement with the supporting documentation. And most importantly, your bank reconciliations on a monthly basis tied to the general ledger. Okay, now in some people's businesses, they don't worry about that too much, but in a government entity, on a monthly basis, and you all see the certifications monthly between the treasurer's reports and the secretary's report, the cash is the king, as Wayne Holiday used to say, and it has to tie monthly. And we can assure you that that's all done and performed, properly. We got good feedback also from any person within the business office who we talk to. They are concerned, they want to do a good job. And whenever we had a question, they were more than happy to answer it. But for the most part, the system here is pretty well set up that it actually minimizes really how much talking you have to do. The bills are all there on the wall. The bank statements are all there on the binder. So I send my staff in, and they go through everything. What I do with them, though, is I alternate them. For example, the young lady who did the payroll this year, she probably will do it again next year. And in the third year, she won't. She'll shift over to another thing. It gives a second set of eyes within my organization. I alternate people because I like them to know the whole job, and B, it gives a second set of eyes to look at internally what's going on. The staff is in the trenches doing the bulk of the work, and under my supervision, and I certainly review it and spend time in the basement with them going through it. So the general ledgers presented, we take those, we transform those into an audit report, actually into what's called the comprehensive annual financial report. Inside this document, there's a lot of description, a lot of verbiage. There's information that's provided by management, by the superintendent, and Mike Gorski, the business administrator, and it's just information about the Township of Monroe. Now, it's not audit information, but it's part of the whole CAFRA process. 20 years ago, the lords of the profession decided it was good to have this so that someone, say on Wall Street or somewhere else, could pick up this book and look at it and determine a little bit more about Monroe Board of Ed, either from a financial standpoint or educational standpoint, just what's going on here, all in this rather thick document here. There's a lot of verbiage, there's a lot of standard verbiage, there's notes to the financial statement that describe the accounting requirements that we have to follow, and by all means, we follow them. You know, you have two CPAs who formerly did school board work, as well as a former employee of mine who works in the office there as well, who's very good. So the infrastructure, the human being infrastructure is pretty well set up, and it just helps enhance the whole control process of the audit. They know what we're looking for. They know how to get the good end product. We do our testing, our inquiry. We get good results, okay? As a result of all of our successful auditing tests, we end up at the end with, and I'll refer you to the page 10, which is the independent auditor's report. It's in the thicker of the two documents. Basically what it says is that we've audited the accompanying financial statements of the governmental activities, the business activities, and the remaining fund information of the Board of Education of Monroe Township for the year ended June 30th, 2015. It breaks it out. They started this about 5 years ago with the opinions. It makes it a little clearer to understand. Management is responsible for presenting us with the records. We're responsible to audit those, and it's our obligation to the board to issue an opinion. And our opinion is that we have a clean set of records and that the operation was proper and everything was properly documented sufficiently and over and above what's required to give me the option, the right to sign off on the independent auditor's opinion. A lot of it is standard wording. Want to point out there's also a management discussion and analysis which is actually authored by the business office in conjunction with the superintendent, where they discuss the operations and highlights that are not normally part of the audit. We don't really go to highlights. All our job is to tell the board that the financial statements present fairly and to tell them also whether there were any operational problems. It's not our job to say you have healthy surplus or it's a bad surplus or whatever. Our job is merely to give an opinion on the records as presented. Maybe down the road, Mike might be able to give a little talk more about the management discussion and analysis. It talks about, actually, it's a good opportunity for the superintendent and to be able to toot their horn about the operation of the district. Again, these are designed for someone else, somewhere else, to look at this and know a little more about the district. You're going to see some interesting numbers, and the reason why we are late is because several years ago, somewhere along the line, people in the public all over the country had questions as to just what it costs to operate a government entity, however, what it costs for what they're on the hook for pension and for retirement pay. I mean, we spent a lot of time discussing that at the exit conference. And what happened was they contrived this document called Governmental Accounting Standards Board. It's a standard, number 68. It's all numbered. And basically what it was required to measure the pension, the long-range pension obligation of government entities. That data was not released in New Jersey until November 13th. It took us all in the industry a little bit of time to get a feel for, like, well, what are we supposed to do with this? We translate that into the audit document, and they gave us some numbers as to what Monroe's allocated share is. Now, the numbers may appear to be significant. It's not an immediate liability. We're not on the hook for it immediately. And there's two different numbers. One is the PERS employees. That's one of the pension systems. Our obligation there is about $30 million. However, it's not an immediate obligation. It's actuarially determined. It could change if the interest rates change, and it's based on mortality rates and a lot of other factors that actuaries use. I'm not an actuary. I can't really go too deep into it. But it's a number, and it's nothing to panic over, but we're required to incorporate it into these financial statements. There's another number for the TPAF employees, okay? That is not our obligation. There is a number allocated to us, but it's the primary obligation of the state of New Jersey. Therefore, it doesn't enter into our records, okay? It is a mention in the notes as to what our obligation is. Again, actuarially determined and put together in a report by a very large KPMG accounting firm. So basically, those numbers are in here as well. There's a lot of comparative information. There's a lot of statistical information. Again, most of it is a joint venture with ourselves and the board office, but within the bigger document, our opinion is that the financial statements present fairly. The other document is my letter to the board about the operation of the district. It contains required information, contains your 2% surplus calculation. It contains information on the ASSA, which is the enrollment counts. It contains information about the net cash resources of your food service fund. It contains meal count information. Even though it's our letter to the board, the state kind of dictates what we have to put in it. But it's also our opportunity to indicate that everything I described previously was done in compliance with the state requirements and also importantly in requirements with generally accepted auditing standards and generally accepted auditing standards for government entities as well. It talks about the fact that we went through the claims, we went through expenditures, we went through payroll, we went through tuition, we looked at bills, we looked at expenditures, we checked for coding, we checked your travel policy, we checked the expenses for travel and the maintenance expenses. We look at the student activity funds, but not as closely as you may think. They're a small amount of money compared to the overall scheme of things here. And we like the fact that they are pre-audited by the business office. It's just a good thing to have. If any of you work in a corporation, you have an internal audit staff, well, it's the same thing. And we have they have the capability to flag down any problems that occur in those areas before it gets to our level. We also have information here about our compliance, district's compliance with the public school contracts law, the compliance with the food service requirements, and basically as a result of our testing and inquiry, we end up with this smaller document which contains a statement that there are no audit recommendations. The office there has a lot of good, hardworking people and qualified people, and as a result, we end up with this document here that shows no audit recommendations. Our audit was conducted, it starts, like I said, early on. The bulk of our work is done in August and September, and we're usually here in either October or November, but like I said, there was a delay in getting the information out, and I still believe there's probably hundreds of school board audits that haven't been issued yet. They're basically all due Monday. Yours was filed effective about 2 weeks ago when we concluded it, so you were the first one in our firm issued. So basically, that is my presentation. I want to thank publicly the members of the business office, and especially Laura Allen, who had a much larger role this year in operating with us and the go-between in answering questions and providing us with documents, and also providing us with the proper computer runs and general ledgers that we needed, and we're thankful to her. But the business office staff was very cooperative, and we're appreciative of that. So we have an unmodified opinion and no audit recommendations this year. And at that point, I don't know, Mike, if you want to do some of the highlights that are in the CAFRA.
Yes, Mr. Poy, the purpose of the public meeting, of course, is to focus on students and programs and instruction. So I'll be brief, but I want to present some highlights from this year because this really was a remarkable 12 months of operations here in the district. And please, anybody as a member of the public, you have a right to an electronic copy of the comprehensive annual financial report as well as the auditor's management report on findings. Simply give me a call or shoot me an email, and I'll tell you how to request these documents via Oprah at no charge because they're submitted electronically, and you could have all this information accessible to you, and there's a lot of good information in here. In the beginning of this report, there's a plethora about curriculum accomplishments this year, and there were many under Dr. Alvick. As Mr. Stankiewicz mentioned, there's an independent auditor report letter. This document and the financial statements contained within and all of the other representations are the responsibility and the representations of school management, Dr. Kozak and myself. And they are audited. The only thing in this larger document that is the Product of the audit firm is the independent auditor's report. Their job is to express an opinion on the financial statements, and they have done so with an unmodified, clean opinion. There is a management discussion and analysis letter, and we went through some of the key financial highlights, but just very briefly again, we had $8 million of bond surplus from this high school construction. $2.5 million was applied against debt service taxes, which otherwise would have been raised through the budget. For the first time in 17 years, we had an average school tax decrease on an average assessed home. The district conducted an ad hoc committee to study the district student growth, and there were two recommendations. One, to do a district redistricting, which was successfully performed this September, and the second was to plan for a bond referendum. That has led to another ad hoc committee being formed, which is in the process now, and we are in a clean slate of studying enrollment and making recommendations on how to handle the incredible student increases and stress that our facilities are facing. We received, we mutually engaged very favorable settlements with the Monroe Township Education Association, whose net budget impact was 2% on the budget, less than the 2.75 that was budgeted. The Monroe Township Support Staff Association, net impact on the budget was 2%, less than the 2.75% that was budgeted, and the Teamsters, which was 1.66, less than the 2.56 that was budgeted. These favorable outcomes were the result of major concessions in the area of health benefits. The traditional health plan, which was the most expensive we have, is being eliminated at the end of the contract year. Co-pays increased, stipends were eliminated, and a lot of reform was created. We refinanced $65 million of 2006 and 2008 bonds, which were outstanding, saving $3.9 million of interest cost over the next 20 years. We mutually came to a settlement in litigation between the Jamesburg Board of Education and the Monroe Board of Education, and that specifically led to our successful bond rating with S&P when we went to refinance the bonds. That was a key concern that was mitigated. A part of that agreement, Monroe will be repaid all of the arrearage as per the agreement. Within a very constrictive tax levy cap, we were very productive in doing capital improvements and applying for a state reimbursement under the ROD grant program of up to 40% of those costs. We saved $3.3 million in health insurance by negotiating out of a direct claims-based plan into a prospective, and another $970,000 by battling with Horizon and threatening to leave in comparative shopping and very aggressive negotiation. $1.5 million was saved in a supply consortium with the Ed Service Commission, and the Monroe Employee Child Care Academy, MECA, was closed this year due to economy, budget considerations, and restructuring of the program, and for other good cause. And the board did not renew the lease agreement with Basque, and instead developed our own in-house care program for students known as Falcon Care. There's $214,000 of monies owed from MECA previously to the general fund, which will be repaid and will be inherited by the new remaining funds, Early Childhood Enrichment Program and Falcon Care. Mr. Stankiewicz covered the pension, so I'll skip that. But again, keep in mind, it wasn't long ago under the Whitman administration that we had a bond surplus. So, my colleagues and I are not too concerned about the financial disclosure right now with interest rates pegged at zero and no earnings accumulating in the pension investments with that number that has to be repaid back. As mentioned in the CAFR, even slight increases in interest rates, which occurred today, will result in greater earnings and a lower pension obligation going forward. And the district generated much more surplus this year than ever before. We put $975,000 via board resolution into a capital reserve account. $600,000 is committed to go under cap in the 16-17 budget for tax relief, and the other $600,000 is dedicated for new student needs throughout the district based upon new student enrollment. The total outstanding debt obligation of the district in bonds is about $139 million, and the borrowing capacity of the district within our limit is an additional $136 million if the board should be so inclined to need to bond that much, which is unlikely. The unemployment rate was always of interest before. That has dropped from 10.2 to 8.7 to 6.5% in Monroe for the year ended June 30, 2015. And a very noteworthy schedule is on page 136, showing increased enrollment, conservatively increasing operational expenditures, and a percentage change in the cost per pupil ratio, which for the last 5 years is about 0.5%, about a 0.5% increase in the cost per pupil increases. That's what an average cost is per child to educate in this district. Our student attendance percentage is very high. There's a penalty of state aid if that goes below an amount. And again, there's a plethora of information in here that I'm not going to bore you with, but please, welcome any requests for this information. I would like to thank the board for the resources that they provided in the business office, and I would like to thank Dr. Alvick and Dr. Kozak for making this report a successful, which is a managerial feat. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stankiewicz, as well as Mr. Gorski. It's always good to get an audit report in which no recommendations were made, which means that we're doing quite well in terms of handling our financial operation. I had also asked Mr. Stankiewicz last week when we met with him, besides recommendations, were there any suggestions? And he also responded that no, he did not have any suggestions either. So that's even a double plus for us in terms of the financial operation of our district. So I thank you for that report, and Mr. Gorski, I thank you for those highlights. It looks as if we're going to have a presentation of plaques. Dr. Kozak, are you going to be taking care of that?
Kathy wants to make a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Kolopanovich?
Yes, it is recommended that the members of the Board of Education accept and approve the comprehensive annual financial report and the auditor's management report on administrative findings, financial, compliance, and performance, and hereby approve and authorize the submission of the required corrective action plan, CAP, to the county office indicating that there are no recommendations for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2015.
So moved.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Nolstein?
I too just want to thank Mr. Gorski and the business office for all their hard work. We went over this in very much more detail than we did tonight at the Finance Committee meeting, and I just want to thank them for their hard work. Just one quick question. I know, and I should have written it down, but the A41, A42, the calculation for the tuition, when is that going to be due so we know exactly what our cost is per student?
Mr. Poi? Thanks. The A41, A42 is a tuition calculation report that the State Department of Education issues. It's available now, and we are currently working on that. At the conclusion of the audit, when this audit is accepted by the board, we extract a plethora of data from this report and enter it and allocate some into the forms A41, A42. It's about a 200-page, legal-size page Excel spreadsheet, and it calculates the per pupil cost in all grade levels and special education disciplines and so on. Then we do the actual ADE calculation for students, including those from Jamesburg, and we do a settlement between what they paid in the budget to what the actual cost and what the actual enrollment was. We should have that information in about a week or two, and we'll report that to a future Finance Committee.
Excellent, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, roll call vote, Mr. Gorski?
Ms. Arminio?
Yes.
Mr. Braverman? Mr. Zarneski?
I abstain.
Thank you, sir. Ms. DeMayo?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman? Yes. Mrs. Koloponowicz?
Yes.
Mr. Nostine?
Yes.
Mr. Prezioso?
Yes.
Mr. Ryback? And Mr. Poi?
Yes.
Mr. Board President, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice holiday. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. We have 3 plaques here to present to 3 of our board members. And, Mr. President, if you could allow me just a couple of words to say about each of the members, I would appreciate that. Is that-
Certainly, go ahead.
Okay. Well, we'll start with you, Mr. President. Okay. And you okayed it before you even knew what I had to say, so there's some trust there, and I appreciate that. It has been my honor and privilege to have served under the leadership of our board president, Mr. Doug Poi, for the past 5.5 months. Mr. Poi brought a unique perspective to the position of board president, having been an educator and having served as a high school principal in, where was that? Oh, it's Hillsborough, that's right. I hope you don't mind, I'm having fun with you.
I realize that.
It's respectful, trust me. Mr. Poi is not averse to asking tough questions. I've sweated through a few myself, but always in a respectful manner. And he certainly expects the district leadership team to ensure that the Monroe Township School District remains in the forefront of innovative educational practices and to ensure that we contribute or continue to be a highly performing school district. Mr. Poi spearheaded the steering committee to study the effect of the growing student enrollment in our schools and facilities, and he insisted on a balanced group of community members, students, and educators in the composition of the ad hoc and the Student Growth Advisory Committee. There are many other things that I'm sure that Mr. Poi did before my arrival here in July, and there's many other achievements and things that I could point to. But I think there is a time limit, and there are 2 other people that I would like to mention as well. But I would like to just finish with saying that Mr. Poi is certainly one of the best board presidents that I have worked for. So with that, we also, let's round of applause. And for this, we have a plaque. You don't sell this, okay? It's budget's tight, okay? We cut back. But it's a presented to Doug Poi in sincere appreciation for dedicated service to the students and schools of Monroe Township while serving as a board member of the Monroe Township Board of Education from 2013 through 2015.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
Next, we have Mr. Prezioso. Mr. Prezioso is a champion for our special education students. His passion to ensure that our students with special needs receive the best education we can offer is certainly evident in his comments and actions. Mr. Prezioso provides a huge holiday party for special needs students every year. It was actually this past Saturday. And I can assure Mr. Prezioso that we will continue to work to ensure all children receive a quality education that will prepare them for successful experiences in college and a career. We deserve a round of applause. The plaque says, presented to Mr. Anthony Prezioso in sincere appreciation for dedicated service to the students and schools of Monroe Township while serving as a board member of the Monroe Township Board of Education from 2013 to 2015.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. President?
Yes, go ahead.
This plaque is very nice, thank you. I would like to thank every board member, Jill, Kathy, Lou, Robert, Steve, Michelle, Tom, and Marvin. We do this job without pay, and I know we put a lot of effort into it. And this is for the kids. We do it for the kids. We have personality problems, but we do it for the kids. And I just want to thank everybody for doing their job and for giving the effort that we give for these kids. And you, Doug, too. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony.
Mr. Cerneski. Mr. Cerneski is committed to ensuring all students, including our Jamesburg students, receive the best educational experience we can offer to them. His commitment to education is evident through his own training as a board member and being an advocate for the children in the districts, plural. Mr. Cerneski, although will still be on the Jamesburg Board of Education, is transitioning, I guess, that the position of the representative to another member of the Jamesburg Board of Education. So I just wanted to thank you for, again, my brief time spending with you. And I would like to read this plaque to you, that this is presented to Robert Cerneski in sincere appreciation for dedicated service to the students and schools of Monroe Township while serving as a Jamesburg representative of the Monroe Township Board of Education from 2013 through 2015. The Stanley Cup this way. Our new Jamesburg representative is in the audience. If you would like to stand up and be recognized. And that concludes the presentations, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kozak. At this time, we will go to committee reports. Do I have any committee chairs that wish to make a report? Mr. Kaufman?
Thanks, Doug. We had a curriculum meeting this evening, and we went over the following items. We had curriculum updates for media literacy, grade 6, language arts, grade 3, advanced web design, grades 10 to 12, computers and business world, 1, grades 9 through 12, family and consumer science for grades 7 and 8. In addition, we had a complete club update by Greg Beyer, who provided us some details on clubs that are currently ongoing, as well as clubs that have been cut over the past year. We had a high-level park update to give us some information on where we stand with doing our data reviews on the information that's come back from the state regarding the park. More to come. January, big thing in January, right? Big show in January? Okay. We also had an update on the special education audit. So we were given a results of the survey that was provided to us and taken from the staff on various different measurements throughout the district related to our special education program. As some of you may recall, we had asked that if we're going to be doing an external audit to take a look on how we do things here with special ed, it'd be a kind of a good idea to take a baseline snapshot of our district and our members here today so that we can kind of compare what we perceive our program to be against what an outside vendor perceives our program to be, so that we can kind of do a gap analysis to determine, are we kind of on par with what they're doing, or did we find stuff that they didn't, or vice versa. So we got the results of that, and I think we're approving the vendor for doing the outside services this evening.
Yes.
And so we're going to have more updates sometime early next year on the external audit. I don't know how long it takes, a month, 2 months?
Probably around May, I would expect the
Okay.
board presentation to the board.
Okay, and we also got an update on a service that we are looking to obtain for Performance Matters, which will give the district administration the ability to analyze the data that's produced by our own internal grading systems, which is Genesis, against the park data that we get from the state, to try and slice and dice the data in ways that we never were able to do before, by down to the student level, and match their data and statistics across the district. So I think it's going to be a good effort to be able to kind of project and see where we're strong, where we're not, where we could use improvement, where we want to go from good to great. So more to come on that as that also develops over time. And anything we know about the standardized testing, knowing that we're in the park world, it's an emerging science, right? We're going to be years away from kind of nailing both the exam and the assessment of the exam. So more to come on that. That's it.
Kaufman, anyone else? Mr. Ryback?
Just very briefly, the Personnel Committee met on Monday, and we will be recommending a position for a media specialist at the middle school.
Anyone else? Mr. Kolopanovich?
As mentioned before, we had a Finance Committee meeting this past Thursday, December 10th, and the only item on the agenda was a discussion on the audit, which we just approved. Mr. Stankwitz, I think, gave a good update on what we discussed at that meeting, and Mr. Gorski gave the key financial highlights. I'd like to commend Mr. Gorski and Laura Allen for continuing to run the business office in an efficient manner and being fiscally responsible to our community. And I think this was evident by the fact that in this year's audit, we were able to, for the first time in 17 years, have a tax decrease, not a tax rate decrease, but a tax decrease of $114 for assessed home. But I also like to thank the whole business office. We as a district have been getting larger. We have more students. We have more staff members. We have more transportation, food service, everything. And as we've gotten bigger, they've taken on a lot more responsibility and have not had an addition to the business office. So I think that they have done a remarkable job. So I just want to publicly thank the business office. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any other chair people? Mr. Arminio?
I just want to point out that on this evening's agenda, there are policies for the first reading, policies and regulations that have to do with the evaluation of the superintendent, evaluation of teachers, teaching staff members, and evaluation of administrators, excluding principals, vice president. They're all on the board website. It's the district website, and then go to the board information, and all of the policies are there for review, and we will be having a second reading next year. So if people are concerned with those policies, I would recommend that they take a look at them. There's also policy evaluation of principals, vice principals, and assistant principals. There's a policy regarding service animals, and then, of course, the use of electronic communication and recording devices. So those are all very important policies. I would like the public to take an opportunity to take a look at those. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to report on the work of the ad hoc committee that we've done. This is for both informing the board as well as the public, since not all members of the board are involved in the ad hoc committee. This committee met on December the 7th. We had 30 members present. Dr. Ivory, who serves as our consultant facilitator for these meetings, suggested that the participants focus on issues that the middle and high schools will possibly face over the short term. By that we mean 2016-17 and 2017-18. The participants broke into smaller groups for purposes of brainstorming and then consolidating the key points within each group. During their group presentations to the entire committee, the following issues surfaced. Find new ways to expedite food services during the lunch periods in light of anticipated crowded lunches. We learned that one of the lunch periods at the middle school is already having difficulties due to the number of students in the 7th grade. We also suggested, or the committee also suggested, that they consider various options for transporting of students to and from school. And finally, they consider ways to maximize the use of traditional instructional areas and also explore a more flexible use of other spaces for instructional purposes. Keep in mind these recommendations are short-term, and we would anticipate that our district and building level management will deal with those problems in a successful fashion. The ad hoc committee, which I said consisted of 30 members at the last meeting, will be meeting with the larger Student Growth Committee starting in January. And those meetings will then continue on the second Monday of each month. The Steering Committee, which is much, much smaller, we met on December the 14th, and which was just this week. The role of this smaller committee is to take care of organizational aspects and planning for those ad hoc committee meetings. We consulted with Dr. Ivory over the phone, He was not able to attend the meeting, and we arrived at the following decisions. The meeting in January should provide all members of the Student Growth Advisory Committee with current and anticipated enrollments, as well as an overview of our current facilities and transportation. This larger committee will consist of approximately 110 to 120 people. Each member will receive enrollment data, demographers' projections, and other relevant information in advance of the meeting. Since this will be the first time that this larger committee will be meeting, it is important that everyone understand the data and come prepared for questions. The agenda plan for the meeting in February will focus on small group brainstorming activities to develop various scenarios for what may be needed in the district when we have increased by an anticipated 1,000 students or more by the year 2020. I might mention that since the beginning of this year, we've had an increase of almost 200 students alone, and that has somewhat been reflective of the past 4 or 5 years. We also finalized the list of people that are on this large Student Growth Advisory Committee. We noted that we would like some additional parents or residents from the northern part of the township, which is served by the Woodland and Mill Lake schools. So if there are any people in the audience or anyone that might watch this on Channel 28, if you are interested, we suggest that you please contact Dr. Kozak's office as soon as possible so that we can get your name on the list, because we will be closing out the membership of that committee. Presently, for the 110 to 120 people that we have on the committee, it breaks down as follows. 46% of the committee is made up of parents, 18% is made up of senior citizens, 13% are teachers, 4% is municipal government, 8% is district administration, and the remaining 11% are made up of a few board members, some students, and a few adults that are not parents in the district. They live in the district, but they do not have children attending the school. I would also like to add that it was decided that going forward, since Jill DeMayo has been on the steering committee all along and will continue to do that, that she will be providing the reports at the monthly meetings to keep the board as well as the public informed. So that concludes that report. We will now go to our first public forum. I will remind you that anyone coming to the microphone, you are restricted to speaking to items that are on the agenda. Please state your name and your address. If you have a group affiliation, please include that as well. And you are restricted to 3 minutes or less. Yes, Mr. Klein.
7 Crenshaw, taxpayer. Concerning the agenda on enrollment for special ed, I see 50 children from our district, 4 from Jamesburg, 27 schools. Now, I can understand that there are schools that have certain specialties that the students need. But in reality, 27 schools sounds like an awful lot. And to go along with this, what does it cost for transportation? That's something you'll hit after my 3 minutes are up. Page 15, under E, where you said there's 124 projects, a 5-year period, it should cost about $7,997,000. I prepared a report, which I'll give later on the Abbott decision. And not only is it my commentary, but I broke down the reports from the Education Law Center, who brought all of them, and to show how it affects us and our taxes. And not only is it my commentary, but it's stuff that people can go into Snoops and check. This is from the people that brought the original Abbott versus Burke decisions, and that's what's affecting all the funding in our schools. I'll go over that later on. I'm under 3 minutes for the first time in my life, and at the second open meeting, then I'll go over the other stuff that's in that report. Mike has the reports that I made that I am hoping he'll distribute, so everybody will see. He gave it already? Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klein.
Yeah, okay.
Sure. Okay, Dr. Kozak wants to make a response.
Okay, in regard to the special ed schools, there's a number of things you have to take into consideration. We might only have one student go to a particular school here or there, and when you look at 50 students compared to 6,500, it's a very, very small percentage of students that we have out of district, especially compared to other school districts. The other thing is the transportation and the tuition. Well, sometimes there's tuition, sometimes it's a public offering, but it is expensive. It is a driving cost for many, many school districts throughout the state. However, we take advantage of jointures such as the Middlesex Regional Executive School Council to share cost as far as transportation. So if they pick up one student from our district, excuse me, they may pick up students from other districts, and we all share the cost on that. We do try to provide the best service for these children in the most economical way possible. But the decision on what school they go to is a joint decision made by parents and educators on the best, on what will be the best fit for the needs of the child. Again, it's a very small percentage. It is expensive. I think everyone acknowledges that. But compared to a lot of schools, it is very low. So we try to do as much of that in-house, and we do have special programs in-house as we can. And we reserve the students being sent to an out-of-district school as somewhat of a last resort after we have exhausted all of the other possibilities in district.
Do we get extra funding from the state for that?
We do, and not to engage in an ongoing discussion, I'll just stop with that, but yes, we do. The state does provide different extraordinary aid for cost that goes over a certain amount, and there's a lot of different formulas on that. So we're on top of all the different ways that we can, even through Medicaid reimbursement, I mean, every single way possible that we can get any kind of reimbursement, we take advantage of for that.
Thank you. Sure.
Anyone else from the public?
Robert Roche, Team Yorkville Boulevard. Staying with that same subject matter, I see that the Jamesburg is listed on the same schedule with having 4 students. It's my understanding from some time ago that we do not pay for the Jamesburg students. Is that correct?
Mr. Boy?
Yes, go ahead.
Evening, Mr. Roche. That's absolutely correct. Those tuition contracts go to the Jamesburg Board of Education. However, as those students are enrolled in our high school, we get the approval for the out-of-district placement.
So that's why they're included on the schedule, because of the approval process that we had?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. By the way, just one last thing. I would like to thank very much Mr. Prezioso and Mr. Poi for their great work and effort in their 3 years on the board.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else from the audience for questions or comments on the agenda? Okay, seeing no movement, I will then close that part of our agenda and move on to the superintendent's report and recommendations. Dr. Kozak?
Thank you, Mr. President. Before we go into the agenda, I would just like to highlight a couple areas for the board. The first is Project Unify, which is under Board Action, item H, page 13. That is a pilot program, and it's grant funded. And it involves, and Dr. Alvick will help me on this, our students working with students involved in Special Olympics. Okay? This program will only continue if the grant funds can be procured. Otherwise, it would have to go through the curriculum committee as an approval for a new club. Yes?
Do you know how much that costs, that program?
Well, it's grant funded, so it's not costing the district anything, but it's, the cost is, I have down as $4,500.
That's the grant.
That's the amount of the grant, I'm sorry. It's $4,500.
Ms. Arminio?
Actually, on that matter, I had a note to myself. So for the first year, it's grant funded, and we don't have to do matching funds on that. I think I asked that already, right? Correct. And and you answered the question, the amount of the award is $4,500? And that will be a review next year, first of all, if it's successful, and secondly, the cost if we don't get a grant?
Yes.
And is it anticipated that, assuming if we don't get a grant next year, the cost will be around $4,500 every year?
Absolutely.
The cost would depend on the activities planned through Project Unify. It's a program for our special needs students to work with general education students. Some of the activities may include bowling, some social activities, some activities in-house, and we talked about it through the curriculum committee about what are some of the activities that would be planned, basketball, track and field. The grant was received from the Special Olympics, so that's who's funding the program this year. The grant from Special Olympics can cover any of our activities, any of the transportation to and from the activities. It can also cover the cost of any stipend to a staff member, but as we always do, the first year there is no stipend for the staff member. The staff member is doing it voluntarily.
And don't we have a program, I mean, I went to a program last year for buddies? Buddy ball. But that was limited to just not that many special needs children, right? Because that was a
Correct.
smaller group?
Correct.
So now, is that going to be incorporated into this, or this is something?
No, this is something
in addition?
separate. Mhm.
Okay. Will there be more special needs students able to get into this program?
Yes.
It expands the attendance?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Item K under board action is the Middlesex County Regional Educational Services Commission. They're basically, that is a school within Middlesex County, and there are representatives on their board from every school district in the county. There are superintendents on the board as well, or board members. So up until now, Mr. Poy has been our representative, and since his term is ending this month on the board, at Middlesex, it has come up, they look for a resolution to approve a new representative. I've offered my services as to be the district representative because the meetings go from 8:30 a.m. till 10, which is immediately preceding my roundtable meeting, my county roundtable meeting, which is in the same location, the same building in Piscataway. However, if any board member would like to be the representative, you know, it's up to you. But it's the board's prerogative on that.
I think that's a great idea that you'd be willing to do that, but I would love to have the experience of Mr. Braverman, if possible, on there. Would you be willing to do that, Marv, do you think?
8:30 in the morning?
In Piscataway.
Sure, we'll hire a car.
Would you be willing to? Because, I mean, I think it's tough. You have a full plate. We all know that, and we appreciate you stepping up. But if, you know, in the past, I think we've always had a member of the board on there. And obviously, the people that work outside the home obviously can't do this. But that's why I immediately thought of Mr. Braverman, unless someone else is willing to step up. But, okay.
We'll need a motion to that effect.
I make a motion to nominate Mr.
Yes, go ahead, make the motion.
Marvin Braverman as our representative to the MCESC representative team.
Second.
Any questions or comments? I do have a question. Mr. Braverman, were you asked previously about doing this? Because in my doing it, I have found that I often, because of the traffic that you experience in trying to get from Monroe up there, I'm having to leave at about 7:30 in the morning just to get there in time for the meeting, just to make you aware that it's not often an easy trip to do.
I don't know if the board knows this, but at one time I was president of the State Association of Educational Services Commissions. I was also president of the MOCESCOM for 3 years and served on that board many more times. Yeah, I'd look forward to it. Probably nobody left that I know.
I just wanted to make sure you were comfortable with it since this...
Professional driver.
Okay, all right.
Should we ask Mr. Braverman if he wants to attend tomorrow, or, I mean, I was planning on doing it, but...
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, then, roll call vote, Mr. Gorski?
Ms. Arminio.
Yes.
Mr. Braverman. Mr. Darneski.
Abstain.
Ms. DeMayo.
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman.
Yes to the appointment, no to the card.
For the record, that was not a part of the motion. Mrs. Koltunowicz.
Yes.
Mr. Nostine.
Yes.
Mr. Prezioso.
Yes.
Mr. Ryback.
Yes.
Mr. Foy.
Yes.
Congratulations, Mr. Braverman. Motion passes.
Do we have to read?
Well, that's going to be on the, it's in the agenda already, so when I get to the board action, we'll just have to exclude that, then. Okay. Yes, yeah. And just quickly, before I ask for a recommendation for motions to be approved, I just wanted to bring to your attention, you receive reports from me as a superintendent report, but they're comprised of information from all the different schools, and just a couple of highlights. There was the Harlem Wizards were brought into a few of the schools to great success. We have STEM challenges going on in all of our schools as part of our overall STEM initiative, and there's some really exciting things going on in the schools. And a number of in the principal reports, you see some pictures and some things going on there. We had a chef, Joseph Raiola, who is a winner from the Food Network show Chopped, and he visited the middle school, and I chopped his name up, I'm sure, but that went over very well. The robotics competition that was mentioned earlier, hosted at our high school last Saturday, was I thought not only it ran very well, but the students, it was great seeing the students involved in that, what they were doing. You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, at the middle school about a week ago on Friday night. I attended that, and again, very nice production. There was a toy collection to benefit Joey's Little Angels. Miss Sherman organized the collection of food and she's one of our tech representatives, organized a collection of food and volunteers to feed the less fortunate on Thanksgiving Day. They gave their time and resources. And our teachers and educational service professionals were recognized today, our Teachers of the Year and Educational Service Professionals of the Year. And if you go on our district Facebook page, all but one is listed. One person, there were some absences in one of our schools, so we couldn't name that person. But tomorrow morning at the middle school, I will be there in the morning along with Ms. Shanley to nominate the person should they be in school. But if you want to see who the people are, they are on our Facebook page. With that, Mr. President and the board, I would like to recommend under personnel, items A through S for approval.
Okay, any questions or comments? Mr. Nolstein?
I'm just looking at the agenda, and just correct me if I'm wrong, this includes the Personnel Committee's recommendations for the salary adjustments? Is that what we're voting on right now? Or is that under board
I
action?
believe that's in the
Board action?
business section? No, it might be under here.
It is in the personnel report.
Is that,
Yes.
that's what we're voting on right now? Okay, great. I have a question with regards to these pay raises. I know it went through the Personnel Committee unanimously. I did some of the calculations, and basically some of the numbers work out to be anywhere from 6% up to 11% pay raises based on their salaries and just throwing a $4,000 increase on top of that. I'm concerned that that's it's a large amount of a salary increase. And I just don't know how well that's going to sit with other people, namely the teachers that got like a 2.5%. That's one of my concerns. My second concern is there going to be a step guide made up so that going forward, we don't run into this situation where we just have to throw a pay raise, arbitrary pay raise at somebody?
Well, Mr. President,
Yes.
Mr. Nostine, this was discussed at length at the Personnel Committee meeting, which I know you're not a member of that committee. So I'll be happy to share with you some of the non-confidential items that were brought up. We have here currently 8 members of the tech staff who have a base starting salary of $36,000. That salary was tied 2 decades ago to the starting salary in the teacher's guide. As you probably know, the teacher's guide increases with percentage increases each contractual period, and that also extends to every step, including the entry-level step. The tech staff are non-affiliated positions, and that $36,000 figure for a 12-month tech person has never been adjusted in the last 2 decades. So Mr. Washington, the director of the committee, presented me with a problem that 3 of his very valuable staff members, including one with specialty in Apple products, were offered significantly higher positions in other districts/municipalities, upwards of $15,000, $20,000. 2 have left, creating a hardship on the department. 1 was loyal enough to stay. This is not a raise that is presented before you tonight. This is a base salary adjustment to properly align the base starting salary for the tech staff and all those who were employed under it to a reasonable market condition figure, which still compares disadvantageously to other school districts. So whereas I respect your comment about the percentage, this is not an increase, it's a base salary adjustment. It's something that should have been done more periodically but was somehow overlooked. As far as a guide is concerned, we talked about that at the committee, and Mr. Washington felt that a guide would restrict his ability for placement of staff, particularly those with a lot of seniority. And due to the flexibility that he needed in the deployment of staff with unique specialties, which is not unusual for non-affiliated staff members who are not in a homogeneous group, it was Mr. Washington's recommendation, and I supported him not to have a guide in that area.
Obviously, we must have looked at other districts, I imagine, in this,
Yes,
this
sir.
search, and that's how we come up with this number.
Yes, sir.
In that, looking at other districts, did we notice or not if they had a step guide when we were going through this?
Some did have a step guide, many did not.
And the ones that we followed on these percentage increases, did they typically have a step guide or not? Or,
Beg your pardon, repeat the question?
The numbers that we're basing our increases on, do we base them on the districts that typically had a step guide?
Very conservatively, yes, that is correct. We still compare with a disadvantage to the districts that do have a step guide. Our salary is low in these areas. This is a reasonable adjustment to lift all the boats that have been affected by a low starting salary increase, which is less than a custodian in the district for a 12-month tech person.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? This is items A through S of the personnel part of the agenda. Okay, Mr. Gorski, roll call, please.
Ms. Arminio.
Yes.
Mr. Braverman. Mr. Zarneski.
Yes.
Ms. DeMayo.
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman.
Yes to all, recuse on O.
What's a recuse on O? So noted. Mrs. Kolpanowicz.
Yes.
Mr. Nostine.
Yes.
Mr. Prezioso.
Yes on everything but no on O.
No on O. So noted. Mr. Ryback.
Yes.
Mr. Poi.
Yes.
Mr. Board President, personnel items A through S has passed.
And on board action, recommend items A through N, excluding K, which was already voted on. So A through N, I'm recommending for approval.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Ryback first, Mrs. Kolpanowicz second.
I didn't hear you speak.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, do we have any questions or comments? This is items A through N of board action,
With the exception of K.
with the exception of K. All right, Mr. Gorski, roll call, please.
Ms. Arminio.
Yes.
Mr. Braverman. Mr. Zarneski.
I abstain with the exception of items H, L, and M, where I vote yes.
H, L, and M, which are a yes. Thank you very much, sir. Ms. DeMayo.
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman.
Yes to all recuse on G.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Kolpanowicz.
Yes.
Mr. Nostine.
Yes.
Mr. Prezioso.
Yes.
Mr. Ryback.
Yes.
And Mr. Poi.
Yes.
Mr. Board President, board action items A through N, with the exception of K, passes.
Thank you, and we'll proceed to your report, Mr. Gorski.
Thank you, Mr. Board President. As a point of correction to an assertion made at the last meeting, I have a brief PowerPoint presentation that I would like to show. It's very brief. And this pertains to the tax payment schedule and the collection of those monies required by statute. A large portion of the revenues of the district are tax payments, which are collected by the municipality. The statute requires that the first two payments be collected by an August date, and that's driven by NJSA 54:4-75, which in summary requires that the municipality shall pay over to the board secretary within 45 days after the beginning of the school year, 20% of the monies from the school tax due. Forgive me. The next slide shows the first two payments which come within that 45-day window, which are the payments that we received on July 10th and August 7th. They total $22,171,564. Those are the payments that were received within the first 45 days of the school year. The total district tax per the tax schedule, which was adopted by the board, is $102,172,618. And as I mentioned, that's general fund taxes and debt service levy taxes. 20% of that figure is $20,434,524, which the difference is excess payment received on behalf of the district above the statutory requirement of $1,737,040, which was deposited as required by law in the the cash management savings account earning interest. And we received a legal opinion that after a complete review of the statute and understanding the schedule of the tax revenues, which was approved by the Board of Education for the 15-16 school year, our attorney confirmed that the business office is in full compliance with the legal requirements governing the payment by a municipality of school monies to the Board of Education. Thank you very much. Mr. Board President and members of the Monroe Township Board of Education, it is recommended that board action items A through M be approved by consent roll call.
Moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Ms. Arminio?
The student achievement data agreement is in this, right, Mr. Gorski?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, just, I think we just had some discussion about, can you just explain a little bit about private information and time frame for analysis?
I would like to defer that question to Dr. Kozak, who investigated it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
So there's two things there that you brought up. One is the data privacy, and the contract, the hosting service agreement, and I just reviewed this with the curriculum committee, specifically addresses that area. And basically, it is that the district owns the data, which is very, very important, and that there are reasonable firewalls and other things in place to protect the student data. Also, all student information provided to Performance Matters by customers shall remain the property of the customer. Performance Matters will not use such student information for any purpose other than providing services and support to customer and will not use any student information to the detriment of the customer. Performance Matters will not sell, assign, lease, disclose to third parties other than what is allowed in Section B. And Section B basically talks about they will only do so under the penalty of law if they are required by a by a court or a judge. That's the only time they would do that. Or commercially exploit any portion of the student information. Upon termination of this agreement, Performance Matters shall return to customer all student information provided by the customer in a usable electronic form and will erase, destroy, and render unreadable all such student information formerly stored on Performance Matters servers. Okay? So that's the security, and our tech department reviews every piece of software that contains student data. They come in and review all that to protect, to make sure that our student data is well protected and kept confidential. The second part of your question, I believe, has to do with the benefit, maybe?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I learned a long time ago from very smart, wiser, older people than I was when I was a teenager or in my 20s, trying to fix a car or something around the house, that if I didn't have the right tools, it's that much harder to complete that job. Basically, this will provide us, the district, with the correct tool to be able to look at and disaggregate and aggregate student data to look where the gaps are in either in instruction or learning. And that's very important for us. It'll also be one data entry point rather than sometimes there's redundancy where teachers are entering the data in this area, in another area, let alone, talk about privacy where data is recorded paper and pencil. And, hopefully it's kept locked in a file, but, that's some things can happen. So I feel a lot better knowing that the data would be in there. This will allow us to look at our data from not only the state assessments, but also our local assessments, our benchmark assessments, and any other assessments. It's a very powerful tool, and it's only as good as we want it to be. And, it'll do whatever we ask it. Highly successful school districts such as East Brunswick and South Brunswick have had conversations with people in both of those districts about, that they like it. They've been using it for several years, and the teachers and administrators absolutely love using it. So I think we'll find a great benefit
Thank
for
you.
the district.
Rizioso?
Two questions there. Would it matter if we use a number instead of student's name?
We discussed that in the curriculum committee, and because the data is protected, I want a name on that. I don't want to be teaching numbers. We don't teach numbers, we teach students. So when we're discussing how a child is doing, and that child could be a junior or senior, I still use the term child or student or young adult, when we're discussing how we can help that child, I want to put a name to that data. I want to put a face to that data so that we know, it's a constant reminder to us that we're talking about kids here. We're talking about real people, not just manipulating data one way or the other. So it's very important to me that we use a name. Yes, we have student ID numbers. Yes, we can hide the names. We can do all that. But it's important when we break out our data into data teams. And that's something that, as a leadership team with all the principals and supervisors, we're starting to do more and more. And I've encouraged, as Dr. Albick has, our principals to have the data teams in their schools when they're looking at that data. It's very powerful when you're talking about a particular student and saying, this student seems to be struggling in this area. Let's all talk, how can we help the student? And then teachers in different subject areas all look at that. So that's why I want the student names there. But
My concern would be, since data never leaves, it's always there, will they be identifying the special needs children?
Only as much as every other data that we use that identifies special needs when it's confidential. We talk about special needs students, and when we have to discuss that there are special needs, when we're talking about the type of accommodations they need and making sure we ensure that they get the right services. So we look at all the data, and there's all of our software. I mean, it's all coded, so it's not publicly available, but that is protected. But in confidential, inside, when we're discussing that, that's absolutely important for us to know if that student has a specific learning disability that we need to be aware of. Sure.
Any other questions or comments? All right, then, Mr. Gorski, we are looking at items A through M. Roll call vote, please.
Yes, sir. Ms. Arminio?
Yes.
Mr. Braverman?
Yes.
Mr. Zarneski?
I abstain with the exception of items A, 1 through 3, B, G, L, and N, where I would vote yes.
Thank you, sir. Ms. DeMayo?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes to all, recuse on M.
Cues on M as in Michael? Yep. Thank you. Mrs. Koloponowicz?
Yes.
Mr. Nostine?
Yes.
Mr. Prezioso?
Yes.
Mr. Ryback?
Yes.
And Mr. Poi?
Yes.
Mr. Board President, board action items A through M passes. That concludes my report. Thank you very much.
We now move to the President's report. Since this is my last meeting as the Board President, there are a few things I would like to say. First of all, I did not do this last month, but I would like to thank all of those people who supported me in my campaign, those who voted for me, those who put signs up, allowed me to put signs up on their property, and I really do appreciate that support. I do see that our newly elected board members are here tonight. Frank Russo, if you don't mind standing up for just a second, and Dawn Corina. I think she's right there. Okay, those are our new board members. I'd like to congratulate you, and they will be installed at the organizational meeting on January the 4th. I thought it would be appropriate, since we are at the end of a calendar year, if I highlighted some of the accomplishments that we have achieved this past year. Some of these you may have already heard tonight, but I put this list together independently of either Mr. Gorski or Mr. Kozak. As Mr. Gorski had mentioned, though, we did refund our bonds, and this is going to result in a savings of about $3.9 million over the life of those bonds, and I understand that that will translate into about $250,000 a year, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
We did end the financially failing MECA program, which was draining money from us. They were not able to pay back the loan or meet their existing costs. And now we are able to accommodate more children in an extended kindergarten program, which will provide a better start for all of those kids, more kids than we've ever been able to accommodate before. We also ended our privately operated BASC program, that's the before and after school program, and we've replaced it with our own board-operated Falcon Care program. And in the years to come, this will not only repay the loans that were given out for MECA, but it will also bring revenue into our budget, and we're always looking for additional sources of revenue beyond our local taxpayer. Something that I think we should really be proud of is the fact that we were able to renovate, during the course of the summer, we were able to renovate the middle school, and we did that out of the regular operating budget. We didn't have to go out for any loans, which is great, and we were able to provide 11 additional classrooms for that very crowded building. And I think that was a very terrific accomplishment, that we could do all of those things in such short time and without having to go out and borrow money. We did approve and successfully implement the redistricting plan according to the recommendations of the demographer study, and this has created a better balance among our K-5 schools. I know it was an unpopular thing. The board did not choose to do this. The state did, and the board was by law obligated to support it, and we did have a relatively smooth administration of Park. Planning for this for several years in the making, this board made sure that our facilities, our computer hardware, software, and our students would be ready with a minimum amount of glitches. And I think we will hear in January from Dr. Alvich the results of that first administration. We did approve a 3-year iPad lease as part of our one-to-one technology initiative, but we got a commitment from the district that it will prepare our teachers to be comfortable with other platforms in the future in case we find that other platforms are less expensive but comparable to the iPad. And after 6 months of intensive search, and I do mean intensive search, we had meetings after meetings after meetings looking for a new superintendent, and we successfully appointed Dr. Kozak over here. Dr. Kozak joined us at the beginning of July and has been with us since, and from all the reports and things that I'm hearing, things seem to be going well, and he's adjusting well to our community. With careful planning, we have the ad hoc committee and the student growth committee, which have started to do some work and will continue to work throughout the coming January through May. And that is, they're trying to find recommendations and ideas that they can suggest to the Board of Education for how we're going to handle our student population 4 to 5 years from now. As I indicated earlier, since the beginning of this year, the first 11 months of this year, we've added 186 students, and we've been adding about 200 students every year in the past, and it looks as if we will continue to do that going forward. The CUSAC, there was an item in tonight's agenda about the CUSAC. In case you're not familiar with that, this is a tool used by the state of New Jersey to make sure that, well, basically to evaluate how each district is performing in 5 different components: instruction and program, fiscal management, governing, personnel, and operations. And we scored high enough on the CUSAC report that we are in a position to apply for a waiver so that we do not have to go through a full 3-year, a full review in another 3 years. And I'm very, very pleased to say that we were only 1 of 4 districts in the county of Middlesex to fall into that category. The other districts, interestingly enough, are our neighbors: East Brunswick, South Brunswick, and Spotswood. So I think we join a very elite group of school districts in showing that we are performing in all components at a very high level of performance. And as you heard earlier tonight, we continue to receive very favorable audits of our business operations. I want to commend Mr. Gorski. Ever since I've been working with him for the past 3 years, he continually looks for ways to save money, to renegotiate contracts, to negotiate our cost of health benefits. He works with us on negotiating the contracts with our various unions, and his assistance and his expertise is really invaluable to this district. At the board's urging, and this largely probably came about through our interviews during the interview process for the superintendent, I think it became clear that the board was very concerned with improving communications for all the constituents of the community. And I applaud Dr. Kozak's efforts already to do that. He has gone out to social media, and any member of this community that wants it can either be updated via their phone, I believe, as well as their iPads or any other technological devices by simply getting connected to it. Once you're connected, you'll always receive the information. You'll be getting electronic newsletters and notices keeping you abreast of what's going on in the district. I believe there's also a system in place that one of the board members suggested, and I forgot who, and I apologize for that, so that if people had questions about the upcoming budget development, that they could send those questions in, and that information, I believe, is available on our website. So that is another new component in our efforts to better communicate, not only to the community, but for the community to communicate with us. It was mentioned tonight that we are presently conducting a review of our special ed services. The purpose of that in bringing in an outsider is just basically to validate what our own self-study may uncover. We're looking for areas where we might make improvements in delivery of services, as well as any cost-saving measures that might be considered. And finally, I believe, of course, maybe this is a little boastful on my part, but I think that we have had a much better working relationship during the current year among the members of the board. I've heard members of the public say that. I've heard some of the board members say it. I've heard administrators say it. So I think we should all give ourselves a pat on the back for working together so well. Going forward, I do want to thank Mr. Prezioso and Mr. Zarneski for their services over the past 3 years, all the time and energy and effort that you've given to that. And finally, my parting words is that I would encourage the board to be mindful of the district goals and the board goals that we set back in September. We have 3 district goals. We have 3 board goals. I was looking at them again the other day, and I think we're making some pretty good progress there, but you do need to be mindful, look at those from time to time, get an update from the superintendent in terms of the district goals from time to time, and I think Dr. Kozak said he's going to do this in January. This way, when we arrive at the end of June, we are prepared to say how well we've done in terms of meeting those goals. Being a member of the Board of Education is indeed a privilege, but it's also a huge responsibility. It requires a commitment and a willingness to listen to all points of view before making a decision. I personally enjoyed my work on the board, and I trust that our new members will do likewise. And for that, I thank you, and that concludes my report. Let's see, we are now ready, I believe, to go to our second public forum.
The board business.
Oh, there's other board, oops, did it again. Okay, do we have any other board business? Ms. Arminio?
I just like to make a comment. I would hope that we could, in its entirety and verbatim, I would make a special request that President Poy's remarks would be included in the minutes. I thought they were profound and very good, and going forward, I'd like to constantly refer to them. So I thank you for that, and I would also like to thank you for your service and dedicated service at that. And you've been an intelligent and able leader. You've brought decorum and clarity and concise information to the board and to the public. And I know that your continued interest in the community will ensure your participation. And I look forward to always meeting you publicly and privately and being very, very grateful for your service. So I appreciate your leadership, and it's been an honor.
Thank you.
And the community has been well served.
Thank you. Mrs. Kolopanovich?
As a Board of Education member for a couple of years or so, I've had the opportunity to work with many board members over the past years. It's been easy, it's been hard, it's been disagreements, there have been conflicts, and there have been good friendships made. I can say that as a board member, I have personally learned something from every member of the board that I've had through my years of experience on the board. And I'd like to thank you, Mr. Poy and Mr. Prezioso, Mr. Zarneski, for the time and the effort you have given us over the past 3 years. It's not always an easy thing to be on the Board of Education. I think people, when they're sitting on the other side of the table, have a different perspective. And when you get over here, things have changed. So your service to all the children in Monroe Township has been greatly appreciated, not just by me, but by, I know, the members of the public. And I'd just like to thank Mr. Zarneski. When I was the board president, your leadership had helped me become a better leader, because I know if I was looking for something or if I wasn't sure, I know that I could count on you, having been in the same position. So I'd like to thank you for that.
Any other? Mr. Ryback?
I just couldn't let the evening go by without chiming in a little bit. First of all, Marv, I'd like to congratulate you on your reelection. And Anthony and Rob, thank you so much for your service. Doug, I guess your years of experience in education, your professionalism, and your honesty have not only earned the respect of everyone on the board, but this community as well. It's been an honor to serve with you on the board, an honor to have you as our president, and a special honor for me to be able to call you a colleague. Thank you.
Mr. Kaufman?
So it wouldn't be December without me asking my favorite December question. Since, Doug, I know you're leaving, I'm guessing you're not going to be seeking the presidency, well, because you won't be here. So I was just curious to know who from the board is intending to run for president at the reorg meeting, other than Anthony. Tom, Michelle, Steve? Okay. Oh, and by the way, echoing what everybody else said about you, Doug, it's not an easy thing being a first or 1 year, first 1 year term Board of Ed member, coming in from really not knowing what this gig is all about to really trying to step up to the plate and taking the leads. Because there's really no really good training for this job. It's kind of like, you're thrown into this gig and you kind of have to figure it out as you go. Certainly the board has had a lot of challenges over the years, and good, bad, or indifferent, you kind of have to inherit what you were given. So as everybody else said, thank you for your leadership this year, and you did a really good job considering the amount of time that you had on the board. Because a lot of people have had that board presidency job after they've been on for multiple terms, because you kind of have to know all the nuances, because again, you don't really know how to deal with the press. You don't really know how to deal with the public. You don't really know how to see and manage all this stuff. So, good job.
Thank you, Lou. Okay, any other board business? Mr. Arminio?
I just want to say that I attended the robotics on Saturday, and it was wonderful and exciting to see the engagement of the children, and I'm very pleased that we're involved in it, and it was, I think we talked about it as being just really terrific that we're going forward with things like that. And specifically, Mr. Prezioso, thank you for your service and your passion, and it was nice working with you, Mr. Sarneski. Also, thank you for your service.
Okay, so we will now go to our second public session. This is the first time we're doing this way. We're doing this before going into closed session so that we don't detain you while we're in closed session. And we do have one, I see, tonight. So once again, the rules are, when you come to the microphone, keep in mind 3 minutes, state your name and your address. Okay, your remarks should be addressed to me. And who would like to speak first? Mr. Gibbons?
Doug, I'd just like to add my support to the praise that you received from the superintendent, yourself, and Mr. Precioso. Was truly deserved. It's kind of sad, though, on another note, that it wasn't too long ago that Mr. Precioso was brought up on what I believe were trumped-up ethics charges. It seemed that it was never, certain board members, managed to do that. It seemed it was never about the nature of the evidence, just the seriousness of the charge. And the reason I'm talking about this tonight is that once you go after someone's reputation, it can be a very hard thing to get back. And I think, going forward with the board, before this ever happens again, the board should be very careful before they put somebody up on ethics charges, because I don't think they would deserve in Mr. Precioso's case. And by the way, Merry Christmas, everybody. Thank you.
Mark Klein, 7 Crenshaw. Again, Doug, fabulous job. Professional, great. I thank Anthony. You did leave many, many good things in improvement to this district. Robert, again, thank you, for representing Jamesburg. And I know I left some. Oh, Doug, I said Doug. I said you. Okay. This is what I want to get to. If you just read the newspaper, North Brunswick had a referendum for $87 million to build 2 new schools. Their growth is, within the last 7 years, 1,000 new students. They expect a 5% growth for the next 5 years. Of the 87 million, 7.3 million was coming from the state. A few months ago, it was announced that the state set aside $169 million to build a new high school in Perth Amboy. Evidently, Perth Amboy didn't know anything about it because they have no plans for land or development or what have you, but that's the state giving them money. I've seen grants in these other schools that are not Abbott districts for roofs, classrooms, labs, all paid for by the state. We get nothing. I'm getting to the Abbotts, but just to give you a note, Newark receives, it's Newark, New Jersey, receives, as of 2 years ago, $1 billion in state aid from the State Department of Education, and they're still failing. Now, I prepared this report. Mike, did you give it to all the members?
Yes.
Okay, what you see, the first page, is basically from the Education Law Center's website. And you can see the way they brag about their conquests. and that's all at our expense. And this breaks it down by years. I originally thought that the Abbott versus Burke decisions were about 5 or 6. There were 20. And I would like you to read through it when you get a chance. I show you my comments on the 3rd page. And then you're going to go into commentary from Wikipedia. And when you read some of this, it's exactly what we've said year after year, and they come up with the same thing. Money does not educate children. Period, cut and dry. On the 2nd page of Wikipedia, just below the 1st paragraph, the part of the state constitution that is the basis of the Abbott decisions requires that the legislature shall provide for the maintenance and support of a thorough and efficient system of free public schools for the instruction of all the children in the state between the ages of 5 and 18. As I've said for years, state constitution, section 3, paragraph 1. This is paragraph 2. I'll be finished 2 seconds. The Education Law Center used that in one of their suits. And that's why when I've been saying all along that we have to file suit, and now you have many other districts in the same position we are. Their schools are overcrowded, they're not getting enough money from the state, and the taxpayers can't pay it. Lastly, I know I'm a little bit over.
How about we do this, Mr. Klein?
Yeah.
We'll see if anyone else wants to speak, and
Okay,
then you
just
can
have
return
one-
for your
It's really
concluding
just
remarks.
one page that I missed, and then I'm done. Okay, you'll see a listing right after I guess it's right after my explanation. This shows all of the Abbott decisions, okay, going back to 1985. And it gives you a brief note as to what they were suing for. So that's the 20. Lastly, 2015, they're requesting more money for construction of new schools. We can't get anything to help us put up new schools. And you'll see the waste that's here. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks for all of your efforts for the years that you've been on the board.
Okay, anyone else? All right, we thank you for your comments, Mr. Klein, and I see no one else. So at this time, I will read the closed session resolution. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Township of Monroe hereby moves to go into closed session in accordance with the Sunshine Law, Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, to discuss the following subject: harassment, intimidation, and bullying. The following closed session action may be taken. The discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public at such time as the need for confidentiality no longer exists.
15 minutes tops.
You promise?
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Kozak estimates that we will be in closed session for at most 15 minutes. So, but that essentially is our business for this evening. If you want to stay, you can certainly stay. But we're going to now go into closed session after we take a vote. All right, do I hear a motion?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, then we'll go into
Could
closed
we
session.
just correct the date of the organization meeting? That it was mentioned that it was January 4th. It's
6th.
January 6th.
It's January 6th,
Right.
yes.
Thank you.
Yes. The board will now resume with its public session. I see no members of the audience, plus their comments are restricted to anything that might have happened, any action that might have taken place after coming out of closed session, and we're not taking any action tonight. Therefore, I will announce that the next Board of Education meeting will be Wednesday, January the 6th, 7 p.m. here in Monroe Township High School. I move that we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Happy New Year to all.
All in
Happy
favor?
New Year.
Okay, anyone opposed?
No
All right.
opposition.
Everybody have a good holiday and a new year.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to run to the bathroom.